following Vince, Mr. Kemaraj Ramchatan, Member of Parliament, who is the leader of the Alliance for Change. I'm Kathy Hughes, Chairman of the Alliance for Change. And Vince, can I ask you to start with your presentation?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Kathy. Well, not good morning. I'm so used to waking up late these days that everything seems like morning to me. But anyway, good afternoon, folks. Welcome again to, thanks for finding the time, and we appreciate you showing up for this conference. As you all know, Minister Patterson presented a motion to Parliament just a few weeks ago, and lots have been happening since then. One of the things that came out recently in the newspapers was the Bank of Guyana admitting that they were involved in some type of an insurance process, and that was confirmed by the Guyana Insurance Association. So on behalf of Mr. Patterson, of course, who owned the motion, I'm going to read the statement here, a statement from the AFC, and it says, new revelations proving that the government lied about full liability coverage. After incessant denials by the government of the facts concerning full liability coverage and their brazen challenge to anyone to provide the proof, lo and behold, the AFC is now in possession of an official letter dated December 15, 2020, from the acting executive director of the EPA to Mr. Alistair Rutledge, president of EPGL, which connects the dots, clearly showing that the government has been remorselessly lying to the people of Guyana when it continuously kept denying its awareness of any plans or consideration thereof, or any existence of liability insurance or parent company guarantee coverage. This letter, titled Compliance with Insurance Requirements, Irrefutable Reveals Otherwise. The letter exposes that the EPA acknowledges receipt of correspondence dated November 30th, 2020, which provides a summary of the steps taken by EPGL to comply with the insurance requirements prescribed by the agency in the environmental authorization. Clearly evidence that despite their denials, the insurance does exist, even though the Honorable Vice President has fooled the nation by first telling us that EEPGL is seeking $2 billion of insurance, then change his tune to say that the EPA will be purchasing the coverage. Then there's a talk now about the $600 million insurance that adds to the kerfuffle. The letter tells all for the first time that there exists a tripartite agreement involving the Bank of Guyana, requiring the Bank of Guyana to give no objection approval for all production and exploration activity, and most notably requires that the insurance procured, it says procured, past tense, by EEPGL be supported by BOG, by the Bank of Guyana, for the tripartite agreement, once again providing unmistakable validation that insurance was procured. Finally, this is all in the letter, to prepare for a meeting between the EPA and EEPGL set for December 22nd, 2020 to discuss these matters. The letter instructs EEPGL that the EPA required prior submission of copies of the insurance agreements which provide coverage for each, and each is in bold, each operation, production and operation, together with copies of Bank of Guyana's approval, no objection for the respective insurance, for the respective insurance agreement. Before now, the government had dishonestly refuted any involvement of the Bank of Guyana, and the Bank of Guyana and the Guyana Insurance Association confirmed such involvement. The foregoing makes it unambiguous that since returning to office, the government has habitually indulged in deceiving its people and denouncing the truthfulness of honorable leaders such as the MP Patterson, who fight for what's best for all Guyanese. It is most treacherous for our leaders to mislead the people of Guyana about this most critical matter of insurance coverage, the absence of which could bankrupt the country and our Caribbean neighbors and severely upset our livelihood. However, as significant as this untruthfulness may have been, it is just the tip of the iceberg and confirms that the government has no credibility and cannot be believed. Just as a reminder, among the many other deceits, this is the same government which falsely claimed that its hands were tied in stopping the flaring because the EIA allowed for a flaring cap of 14 million cubic feet. They also keep denying that the EPA and EPGL were holding meetings to finalize parent company guarantee for full liability coverage above the insurance limits. It is now easy to deduce that they are not telling the truth on that matter too. Rather than bring disgrace and dishonor to the high offices of leadership of Guyana through the drip of information shrouded in secrecy and subjecting the people of Guyana to the enduring pain of uncertainties associated with the dire consequence to their lives of an oil spill, the AFC calls upon the government to once and for all come clean by 1, apologizing to the people of Guyana and the Caribbean for this cold-hearted conduct. 2, releasing all of the documents which it has been hiding and denying, to include the EPGL's letter to EPA dated November 30th, 2020, which provided steps by EPGL to comply with these insurance requirements. 3, releasing the tripartite document involving the Bank of Guyana. 4, releasing the copies, which was referenced in the copies of insurance policies referenced in the letter and requested to be delivered to EPA by December 22nd, for the December 22nd, 2020 meeting between EPA and EPGL to show the people how much insurance we have. 5, releasing all of the draft parent company guarantee proposals and related documents that were being discussed between the EPA and EPGL attorneys. And 6, releasing all other documents and information connected to this matter of full liability coverage. That is insurance plus parent company liability coverage. That's what I have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vince Adams. And I'd like to go to Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan at this point in time. Kemraj, can we unmute so we can hear you?
Am I on mute now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much, members of the press, being here at this important press conference. The AFC notes the explosive meeting in which the GAISUCO board chairman and vice chairman was in a war with the CEO, Sesnarayan Singh. We found that this was inevitable. Sugar, without the right sizing that the coalition had implemented, has no future. And right now, by virtue of wanting to go to other estates and make spendings across the board, we feel that it will be money wasted. We too, today, by virtue of that GAISUCO board meeting, see alleged corruption coming from a commissioner, Univera, against Sesnarayan Singh, involving these tractors, the favored game tractor versus the John Deere tractor. The misbehavior of the CEO at this board meeting should see him sanctioned. To call commissioners the descriptions he called them there, and to call the chairman of the board as he called them there, is sufficient to see him being compelled to send in his resignation as CEO. Sugar with Sister Ryan would certainly have no future. The AFC had indicated that the CEO is an unsuitable candidate for the governance and the administration of Guy Succo. He knew nothing about sugar and has been appointed as part of the favoritism practice and procedure adopted by the PPP government since its installation in 2020. Some $13 billion have been spent thus far, and coming out of the supplemental appropriations paper that will be debated on the 8th of August, a further set of monies is also stated there for Guy Succo. Like so many other policies of the PPP, this will be another failed one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramshatan. Members of the media, just to let you know that Member of Parliament David Patterson is in this press conference. And as I open us up to questions from you, if there is any other issue or topic in relation to Mr. Patterson, please feel free to ask. But let's start with questions for Dr. Vince Adams. You know the usual protocol. Please identify yourself and the organization that you represent. And I would ask you to use the raise hand format. And if I miss you, please interrupt. Adam Harris, please proceed.
Yes. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
I have an interest, well, two things. I'm going to talk with Mr. Ramshatan just now, but for Mr. Vince Adams, this letter has been in the system for what, 18 months, 20 months? How is it that it's only surfacing now? This letter about the insurance policy, isn't that supposed to be a public document?
Well, you would think that it should be. I mean, at least when I was at EPA, nothing was, unless it was really something that was confidential. You folks remember me. I used to be in the media every day, and a lot of people think that I used to say too much, but it never bothered me. Nobody within government, as a matter of fact, held me back from what I said, even including criticizing the government that I work for. But to answer your question directly, that's what I would think. But I think it speaks to the whole modus operandi here, which is what I and others have been talking about here, Adam. Is this secretive, where you've got to get drip of information that comes out, and then you find out that what the government is telling you is totally different to what's actually happened and what the facts are, as this letter clearly states. Because the denials about you ask them a question about the insurance, they dodged. There's no insurance. There was no agreement for parent company coverage. And the darn thing is, it's in the permit. It says you have to have insurance and you have to have parent company guarantee. But they're not telling anybody what those are. But they're just denying that they exist. Well, this letter clearly, without unquestionable, acknowledge that those exist. Is a matter of them coming out now, and that's what the AFC is asking for. Is for them, they owe it to the people to come out and come clean, and be open and transparent, and let us all see how much insurance we have, what are the agreements, what are the conditions, etc. But you're absolutely correct. These are things that it belongs to the people. It does not belong to any particular person in the government or the EPA. It belongs to the people. I don't see anything secretive or confidential about telling the people, letter that tells the people how much, what type of insurance you have and how much you have. I said it from day one when we first had the insurance. I made it public. It was all over the newspapers and every place else. There's no secret about it.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Any other questions to Dr. Adams or to Mr. Ramchatan?
Perhaps I better go to Mr. Ramchatan and ask about this Gaisuko thing. Like you, sir, I listened to the interaction between the two men and I wasn't clear. Did the board actually procure the tractors, or did Gaisuko or the one set the tractors and came into conflict with the board?
That is what I understand. The CEO and his team, it would appear, on a frolic of their own and against the advice of, I understand, both the minister and the board, went ahead and did certain things. And that is what caused this tremendous explosion at that meeting. And the board was not allowed any participation even in seeing how that game tractor would operate under the circumstances of what you call a kind of a pilot arrangement to see how it is, what qualities it has and things like that. So the board was not told about all of that, and at least Mr. Tony Vera was not there. So it seemed that there was a huge conflict between management and the board, especially the CEO and the board members.
So what is the implication now for the sugar industry? Are they buying the tractors that the CEO intended, or will the government intervene?
Well, I hope that the government intervene and do not waste our taxpayers' dollars, because the government now knows, as a result of that leak of the big explosive meeting, what is the thinking of its members of the board, as against what is the thinking of the CEO. And so the government at least should put a halt on the purchases of any more of the tractors. That is, if the purchases have not been made already by the CEO. But if it was not being made and only the two of the game tractors were bought, well, then certainly the government should ensure that no further, and that there should be a more comprehensive measure of whether the John Deere is better than the articulated tractors. But more than that, it just goes to show that the entire industry, notwithstanding these tractors, has huger problems. The problem of unity between directorship and of boards and of the CEO and his set of managers. If you are going to have polarization to the extent whereby prostitute talk is going to be carried out in such an important board as Gaisuko, then look, the government not only got to stop tractor purchases, but it must knock off Says Narayan Singh. He is showing that he's totally incompetent and is not listening to his board members. That is why we had a board. In the structure of a board, as we understand in Guyana, the board members have to be brought to light on all these matters, and then they have to make certain decisions. And when he is calling the chairman unfair and all kinds of things and shouting, and the man is asking, he's not fit to be the CEO of Gaisuko, as we have said a long, long time ago. So Gaisuko got major problems.
Thank you, Mr. Ramchatan. Now can we ask Divina of Kaito News to ask her question?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My question is to Dr. Adams. I'm seeking some clarity on this new document that you're talking about. Sir, can you say how, I'm sorry if I missed it, but can you say how you got your hands on this document and give some more information as to when you got it and so on? Thanks.
Well, I never said that I said the document belongs to the AFC. The AFC got it. So let me first of all, I thought of something here from the question coming from Adam to start with, so that folks wouldn't read into the question. This document is dated December 15 of 2020. I left the EPA in August, the first week of August in 2020. So this document is dated after I left. So I had nothing to do with this document because I hear the Honorable Minister in Parliament debating Minister Patterson's motion and said, well, if I remove documents from EPA, I should turn it back in. Well, I wish I had, to be honest, but that's not the way that I'm used to operating, as a professional. But maybe if I'd known what we would have been into, I probably would have done so. But yes, this document was obtained by the AFC, and it belongs to the AFC.
Thank you.
And Navina, I want to make it quite clear to you. In whistleblowing matters, we don't have to tell you our source. And if you would like to know that the truthfulness and authenticity of that document, you just have a look at it. See who signed it, the secretary, who it is headed to, and all of that. It is vital that you check that out. And we are not going to tell you our source. We will never do that, because we are not going to get more of these whistleblowing documents or whistleblowing giving us the information.
No, that's okay, sir. That's okay.
Please.
What I would like though is if you're saying it's okay for us to see it, is if we can just have a copy shared with the media. So
Certainly.
Okay.
And share it.
Yeah, certainly, Davina. We will be issuing a written copy of the statement and of the letter.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any more questions? I don't actually see any more hands up.
Yes, I'm
okay.
sorry.
Okay,
You want to go to Vina?
Yes, sure. I have a question for Mr. Patterson, actually. He said that he would be submitting a motion to Parliament on produced water. I think he said it was supposed to be done this week. So I'd like an update on that, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Are you hearing me?
Yes, clearly, David. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Davina. Yes, the motion is almost finished. I'm just putting some finer points onto it. Parliament goes in recess on August the 10th. It will be in there before August the 10th. I think it's an opportune time to have such a motion. What we're looking at as well, what I'm considering as well, is to expand not only for the wastewater, which is excellent. I see there's issues now on a matter which we raised during the motion with the shore base about the activities that are happening now on the Demerara River. So the wastewater will go, but I will speak with my team and see if that can be, if we can also incorporate within it the activities that are happening in the Demerara River. You could remember that I brought a motion on shore base and requested the government do a land use policy and a policy for just particularly for the oil and gas industry, in the sense of where you're going to site it, what the effects is going to be on the communities and the industries and those things like that. And then we have a holistic plan. That was rejected out of hand by the government. They scoffed and they laughed, and of course, because they never understood the implications of the actions of having our industries a free for all. So anyone living along the East Bank corridor will know that all the properties on the riverside of the river are being taken up by various agencies. There is a large dredging operation on the mouth of the river, which was particularly, I know for sure, not recommended by the technical persons. And all of this is coupled in that tiny, less than a quarter mile between the mouth of the river and or a half mile between the mouth of the river and where all the shore bases are. That area will become even more congested as we go forward. So the effects of their ill planning is now being shown. And I hope the media recalls their comments and scoffing that you can't have a plan for oil and gas only and those things like that, a planning policy. And you recall all of these things as these issues transpire and keep coming on. It's just it's like sticking your head in the sand to have all your industries located along one stretch of the river without a plan. Shortly, if things go correctly, the new bridge may start. That will add to the congestion in the river, and our poor fisher folks will be the commercial cargo and everyone else will be the losers in that. So yes, the motion will be in before the end of sitting in the parliament, before the recess of parliament, and we're looking to see if we can expand it once again.
I just have a quick follow-up, if that's okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you say exactly what your motion will be calling for?
Well, primarily issues that we have raised before. One, as you know, Tao, there is probably about 40 ships operating out there at the moment. Not only the 2 FPSOs, but also supply ships and those things like that. So one, there's a question of ballast, dumping and ballast, but more importantly, from a drilling operation, hot, toxic, acidic water comes up and it's supposed to be treated. It's supposed to be looked at and then diluted before discharged back into the ocean. It's not being done to any sort of standard, like the World Bank and the IMF have said they have given a standard. So we want to ensure that that is done. The government, once again, always gloss over these issues. They depend on whatever Exxon tells them. So the genesis of the motion is that the government of Guyana sets the standard. We don't have the standards in the moment, but they set the standard based on some international index and demand that Exxon complies with it. Right now, Exxon are doing whatever they please. We have no way of monitoring it, and we simply plain follow the leader, which is Exxon. So we're trying to get ahead of it, just like with the limited liability, try to get ahead in the event of any continued adverse effects. Same like flaring, you know, it's out of the same issues. We've been raising these things because they are happening right now. The government has they're simply, all they would like to do is continue pumping oil, which no one is stopping them from pumping oil, but there are safeguards and necessary guarantees that you have to give the people of Guyana, and they're not doing it. In every other country in the world that Exxon operates, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, they have to comply by laws and our environmental laws. But obviously in Guyana, somehow strangely, they do not have to do that.
Let me quickly add to what David said there, and this is just a reminder, if you will, because I've been talking about it. I know David has been talking about it too. There was a government team. There was a government team when we were doing the Payara that brought in. You remember when they brought in the lady from Canada, because when the new government changed, they wanted to. That's right, Redford, Allison, I think. They brought her in because they wanted to expedite the permit for not the permit alone, because we had to do the field development plan that was under Dr. Bino at the Department of Energy. So we were busy working on that, but then of course the permit comes after that. So there was a team put together by Allison Redford when she got here, and it comprised of her folks. She brought in I think a couple of technical people. It comprised of the EPA, myself. It comprised of the GGMC, and it comprised of the Department of Energy. And we unanimously, as a matter of fact, Ms. Redford was even more adamant than I was, if that is possible, that the water has to be re-injected back into the reservoir. And there shall be no flaring. we had a meeting with it was, and it's all that they were in these draft documents though. So that was our agreement that the team, the government team, we also met with Exxon and told them this here will be the new requirement. This all happened, I left in August, so we're looking probably around July, this is taking place, right before I left. And then what happened, when I left in August, of course, the permit was, and we were, at least the EPA was not gonna grant them any permit for the fire. And I could vouch for the Department of Energy, they were not gonna be granted, the FDP was not gonna be approved because that's what we had to approve for us. So all these discussions and everything was over the field development plan that was under Dr. Bino, and he and everybody else agreed that this here shall be what it is that Exxon has to follow. So this is not only coming from me or David. This here was coming from the government team itself that was ignored, including Ms. Redford from Canada, that was brought in by this same administration. So that's, again, those are some other documents you folks in the media have been asking. You've been asking for that Alison Redford report. I know that for sure. On to know nobody, it's not surfacing, because what I would like to see, and all of us would like to see, whether they maintain that decision after I left, or whether they changed that decision, and what was the basis of changing that decision that this team had arrived at.
Okay. I think that Adam Harris had a question. Adam?
Yes, ma'am. Vince, this insurance that is there now, that we don't know the size, do you think that it equates to the unlimited liability coverage that, should have been in existence in the event of any calamity out there?
All right. Well, I'm confident it's not. And there's some confusion. I even noticed people even writing in the newspapers, and they're talking about, like even Mr. Datadin, he did not even read, he could not have read MP's partisan motion, and was arguing along the lines that he was arguing, because everybody keeps calling this full liability insurance. Make sure that it's up to date, and they're paying their premium. And then clause 12.5, which is the very important clause, is that the parent, there has to be parent company coverage to cover anything over and above the insurance. So it's insurance plus the guarantee. It's not an insurance that the parent company is having, it's that guarantee letter. And especially when I hear Mr. Datadin and others saying, well, it's going to cost too much. It doesn't cost the parent company a single dime to send a letter of guarantee. So that's the puzzling part, because you hear from them, well, we will never walk away. That's okay. Put it in a guarantee letter to say you'll never walk away. It's not costing you a dime by putting it in a guarantee letter. This is only in the case of a spill for anything over and above the insurance. If you're telling me you're not going to walk away, well, please put it in writing, which is exactly the same thing that I told Rod when we couldn't, when he was pushing back, and he decided, well, yes, and he went ahead and said it. So that's the confusion. So to get back to your question directly, is no, I can almost guarantee you that they do not have this full coverage liability. There is insurance. And why I'm curious, I know for sure, I saw the insurance. He went before I signed off on Lisa 2 permit, he had to go and get the document, the insurance document that showed that here's proof of the insurance. It's there. And when I added up the numbers, because it had several different pieces, it was like close to 2.5 billion. I went to the media immediately, and I was talking about it all the time. So how come nobody ever disputed it or anything? And now, when I got out, they said, well, that never existed. That was just my imagination. Well, nonsense. It's in the permit. It's in the permit. So I want to know. And then when I hear the vice president says, well, he's now going after 2 billion, did they cancel that 2.5 billion insurance and not paying any premium, that now they have to be talking about going and buying a new 2 billion, and now I'm hearing about this 600 million. So those are the missing links that they need to let people know, and we need to find out the facts. And this letter here takes us, I guess it's part of it, and hopefully they're going to show us everything, but I don't know. I know that they don't, because like I said before, we did not get to the second part. We were negotiating. My lawyers were meeting with EPGL lawyer to come up with a guarantee letter. They came in, they had several meetings, and after every meeting, the lawyer would come down to my office, and we would say, well, okay, here's a proposal, and I would give him my suggestion. He would say, then he would go back to them. They would have meetings. We were getting close in August when I was leaving. As a matter of fact, the reason why we were getting close was because I said I'm not going to sign off on the PIARO until we had that agreement in place. And then, of course, that agreement was shoved aside, and they're denying that agreement ever. I would love to have, for Mr. Rodhenson, and of course our lawyers and their lawyers, to say that this wasn't taking place. I would love to see them doing that on the road.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adams. Are there any other questions? And if there are none, I will take this opportunity to, Davina? Okay, Davina,
Yes,
just
sorry.
in the nick of time. Please proceed.
Yes. Thank you. I was waiting to see if anybody else had questions. 2 things. I would like to know what the party's position on this Rystad report, or predictions basically for Guyana's growth in the oil industry.
Kemraj, you want to take that? Or anyone?
David?
Listen,
Go ahead, David.
David, go ahead.
we have been observing Rystad's comments since the inception, since 2016. If you can recall, this is the same company that made a prediction that the deal is, the contract is so flawed. If you do your research, they came out in 2016 and decried the contract. And they're now coming 5 years later to laud the contract which they had, which we have now. So, a couple of things, and I know Kaiser News has raised it. Who commissioned this report? The persons don't just simply arrive in your country and commission a report. Someone commissioned the report. Who's paying for it? We do have our suspicion it's a pro oil and gas committee is paying for it. I want you to remember that just in 2020, in February 2020, there was a company called, I think, Global Witness, who came with an extremely damning, I think Oil Giveaway is the name of it, extremely damning report. And when the dust settled, we heard it was paid for by pro-lobbyists. They had to retract it because every single thing contained in it was not true, was fictitious. And so we have to be worried about these experts that have been rolling in and lauding these contracts while they're here. I saw the same gentleman without any information whatsoever. The only studies that were done on the oil and gas were done under the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. And the last one was done in 2018. And that was only a feasibility study in the sense, is it feasible, technically feasible. There's no economic test was done on it. And they said, yes, it's technically feasible because almost anything is technically feasible. Now we've landed people on the moon. Yet this company has come up to and written in their report that the gas to shore project is good for Guyana. Absolutely no additional data, absolutely no studies. I mean, if you could remember in budget 2020, and I'd asked you to go back to that. And when they unveiled it, the government promised and they swore, committed that they will have additional studies. In budget 2020, there's a provision for 5 studies. Absolutely none has been done. And what they're doing now is they're even going out to tender at the moment for different parts of the gas to shore project. But this is the duplicity in the government. They say something and they think that the Guyanese have very, very short memory. They were supposed to go to geotechnical studies. They were supposed to go out on transmission studies, grid stability studies, power gen studies, and they're all listed there if you go back to budget 2020. If you go back to the very first day that they announced it, and I think Mr. Brassington thought that they're procuring specialists and engaging specialists in 2020 and 2021. So when you hear companies that have, and I also want to link to the FAO's, the FAO made a comment on fishing depletion in Guyana. And then when challenged, and then that's what you're doing the right thing, they said, oh, well, they haven't done it in depth. This is just a snapshot. And these are what the government is doing and risking our entire lives on. They're calling in companies, or they're getting friendly organizations, they're calling companies, pay them a few quid. They come and they give a snapshot, and then they're championing it as though it's the holy grail for the industry. At this embryonic stage of the oil and gas industry, we're supposed to have in-depth studies onto these things. This oil and gas will be for us the next 40, 50 years. We've seen the issues and the dangers in other countries, and in our haste, unfortunately, we continue, and we are heading exactly down that pathway.
Yeah, David, let me add here that absolutely, David's studies with the Ministry of Infrastructure studies were the only studies done, by the way, on the gas to shore project. And the contract says that before any such project could be implemented, there has to be a feasibility study done. But apparently we're going ahead and even issuing, you folks have written about it, we were issuing the contracts without even starting the permit process and those type of things. And the other thing that I was really really pleased. I read Kiana's article today, and I was really pleased with the kind of questioning and challenges and the challenges that were posed to this Rystad group in their meeting, this recent meeting that they had. I think it was yesterday or whenever. But those are the kinds of questions that I feel very pleased when Guyanese are raising those questions and challenging them. And one of the things that remain unanswered, by the way, was it was suggested that, or it sounds like they admitted that they were paid consultants to Exxon, this Rystad group. I think it was right to the end of the article there. It suggested that. But let me say I'm very happy that you folks are really challenging and are asking these difficult questions as to what's the basis, how did they, which was asked in this meeting here, what was the basis, what's your qualification, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Kathy, one last thing for Kemraj. Does the opposition have members on the Gaisuco board? Generally, the opposition would be allowed to nominate members on the board. Does the opposition have any members on the Gaisuco board?
No, we don't have. We were never asked of an opposition member.
Well, then I can ask you the rest of the other.
Yeah, Aaron, let me expand on that. Just one thing, because the opposition has no representative on any board.
Yes.
Save and except the ones that are prescribed by the Constitution or by law. So wherever it is not prescribed by law, like say the Public Procurement Commission or the ones that the leader of the opposition has to consult with the president on, we have no representation. This is stark difference from the policy on the coalition, where we made it mandatory that every single board must have a parliamentary opposition representative on it. So to answer your question, the blanket answers on absolutely no board have the opposition nominated, other than those that is statutory or constitutionally required.
And that includes the NRF.
That includes the NRF, that includes the local government commission, that includes every committee that they have done so far.
They select the opposition representative for the NRF board. Remember?
Yes, they did, if you can recall that.
Okay, Davina, I see your hand up. I'm figuring that you forgot to pull it down. Is that correct? Or do you
No,
have
I
one
actually
last
have-
question?
You got
How
a
about
question?
2 more?
Okay, 2, and then we close off. So go
All right,
ahead.
so thank you. I have a quick follow-up on something Mr. Patterson said earlier. He said we should be worried about these people flowing in and so on. So to that, sir, do you have any specific area you feel the public may have been misleaded in that specific presentation? Also, will the opposition be attending Parliament on Monday?
On the question of the opposition attending Parliament, I don't think the final decision has been made. I think we have had meetings. I think sometime today or maybe tomorrow we meet again to get a unified position. I can say we do have great concerns on the financial paper that has been tabled. We had the largest ever by 40% budget passed in February, and you're now coming back for $44 billion. So there is concern on that, but the final decision has not been made. When you come to any concerns, I'm particularly concerned with how, and I think Kaichur News and the other newspaper, how glossy and glorified these reports are on the oil and gas industry. And by comparison, if you can remember 15, 20 years ago, smoking was on vogue, and they smoked. The big 4 tobacco companies had glossy ads, and they brought in actors and studies and those things like that to promote it. We were all, and we all bought into that at the time. Of course, time proved it was detrimental. Same thing with climate change. There's a massive, big lobby, particularly by these same oil and gas companies, saying to you that that climate change is a hoax. That's in the reality. And so this is part of the narrative, and that's why I absolutely disappointed in agencies like Rystad that the objective discussions on the merits and demerits on the pace in which we're extracting our resources has not been discussed. Yes, we know that our oil is in high demand. Yes, we know that there's a low break-even point. Yes, we know that oil will be in demand for the next 40, 50 years, even though there is a move for renewable energies. However, we also have, and yes, we know that the oil companies are making billions of dollars on it, and it's a very lucrative field, the Stabroek Block for them. However, every time you hear a reporter or a alternative independent organization comes to say, so hold on a second, there are challenges with the pace in which Guyana is going, absorptive capacity. We don't have the capacity to do all the things that we would like to do at the same time. And I'm saying this because the oil and gas industry, they have long, deep pockets and it's cost recoverable. So they're driving up the supply and demand, So they're bulk buying stone, for example. They can afford to pay premium for it. The homemakers' stone is short, local materials are short because the demand is is so high. We don't have the labor. We can't absorb the amount of money that is thrown into the system at the moment. None of these agencies come and all they do is come and tell you how great your oil is, but they don't do the other and deeper analysis, which we need, which is the effects of pumping so much money so quickly into small and underdeveloped economy like Guyana. Corruption is rampant. Corruption, I can bet my last dollar that we will fall at least 5 places on the corruption perception index at the end of 2022. Sugate alone is 4 points, and then the rest, you know what I mean, the minister that has his hand in logistics and those things like that, we will drop at least 5 points in the CPI index. They don't speak about that. They touch disease. Our fisher folks will no longer be fishing. Sugar is dead. And obviously the undertaker, Mr. Sayes Narayan, is there, the mortician. They're not speaking about that. And what naturally happens is every single industry will gravitate towards something in oil and gas because that's where the money is. None of these agencies are coming, and of course the government having the great, beautiful ceremonies and on the front page. None of them are coming to say, well, hold on, this is the good about your country and about what you're doing. Here are, based on our research, here are analyses of the pitfalls. They're not doing that. They're just telling you the good, collecting the funding from whoever they're paid. Why are they here? Who invited them? Do they go to every single country and maybe there's something you can research that produces oil and presents an annual report? They don't. They pick and choose which countries they go to. If they were like, say, Transparency International issues a worldwide report on oil production, you could say yes, well, you could accept it. But they pick and choose where they go. So we do have a difficulty in selectivity of what they do.
If I may ask, just add that a piece here. It is very, very important that reporters ensure that they know the authentic sources of information and reliability of that information from that source. And that is why journalists got to be more than mere reporters. It is fundamental that when they make up all these writings and so on to look good in the eyes of those who have paid them, that there will be other people who will be impacted. Reports like these must also go to Albion and Port Morant and all these other feel the impact. None of these people doing these reports have checked out that aspect of it. And that is a lacuna and a big deficit. And so reporters must also ask these very vital questions.
Okay, Davina, I know you asked about the supplementary request that is coming to the Parliament on Monday. And of course, we will update you on our final position. But I will also share with our documents today an extract from the FMAA. And of course, that outlines the format in which any supplementary request for supplementary funding should come. And I'm not sure if you are aware, but one of the things that we are concerned about that I wanted to mention is in that act, there is a section 4. I'm not going to bore you with all, I just wanted to read this part, where it says the minister, quote, shall present to the National Assembly the reasons for the proposed variations and provide a supplementary document describing the impact that the variations, if approved, will have on the financial plan outlined in the national budget. And so one of the things that we continue to be concerned about is that in addition to all the challenges we have within our current parliamentary engagement, and here we're talking about motions that are assaulted and dissected. We're talking about, on several occasions, not being able to be given an opportunity to speak on national issues. And of course, there I can recall when we had the floods recently that we had a statement we wanted to make and we're not allowed to. Of course, there was a motion on cost of living increases, which affects all Guyanese, and we were not allowed to. So we actually feel in the AFC, on the members of parliament, that we are being silenced. And it's interesting, I read you that extract because that supporting document that really explains why these requests have been made. And here we're talking about 44 billion, not million, $44 billion that have come. And of course, the supporting documents have not come with what we have been given as members of parliament. I think the public would be in possession of the financial paper, and you can look yourself and see that it is absolutely devoid of any detail. There are requests for large funds for different line items, different ministries, and there's the least bit of information that's presented. So those are some of the concerns, and you will certainly hear from us more on that. I thought I would mention it since you did raise the issue of the financial paper that comes to the parliament. Having said all of that, I want to thank our presenters.
Kathy, if you give me just 1 minute.
Sure.
To close here, because I think this here is very important. Because apparently we've been going around in circles, and I'm going to plead with the media to please educate the folks and Mr. Dattadin that the full liability coverage does not mean full insurance. So we need to get off this thing that full insurance is going to cost is like a $70 billion insurance. I think what I'd like to ask you folks is to say that the guarantee, first of all, you have the insurance, whatever that is. And everything over and above that insurance, all we ask for is a guarantee from the parent company to cover it. They say they will never walk away. Well, put it in writing. It's not costing them a dime. So I want you, please, if you can make that point to Mr. Dattadin and the public, that does not cost Exxon a dime. It's only the insurance piece, which is normal, that costs them any kind of money. The rest of it is just a guaranteed letter. I don't know why they're running from this guaranteed letter when we were already down this path and almost getting the guarantee. They had agreed to it. It's in the permit, by the way, which means we're running two operations, which is a point I want to make again. We're running two operations, Liza 1 and Liza 2, with it, and it's not in compliance. It's against the law. We operate in those two facilities without, maybe even without, well, we probably have insurance, but without that guarantee that they have signed up to in those permits. We run operating those two projects without complying with what's in those permits.
Thank you very much,
Kathy,
Dr.
I know that you want to stop. I just wanted,
okay.
and this is my last comment, and it's aimed to both. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Davina, I'm going to quote from Budget Speech 2021, page 38. And I am quoting, and this is monies were allocated for, and then I'm quoting directly from page 38, paragraph 4.38, if you would like to check it. And this is on the Gas to Shore project. During 2021, detailed geophysical, geotechnical, engineering, and environmental impact studies will be launched to inform government on technical considerations as we advance efforts to land the gas ashore, land the gas onshore, and bring the power plant into operation by mid-2023. That was money were allocated in the 2021 budget. As you know, the speaker does not allow you to ask questions at 2022 on how you spent the budget on in 2020. At the next year, he only permits questions on the budget as presented. He said that's what the government is defending. But In 2021, they were supposed to launch detailed geophysical, geotechnical engineering and environment. Never were done, but they're now moving apace, awarding contracts in this, and that's something that has to be followed up. Thank you, Kathy, for indulging me.
Thank you very much. With that, I want to thank the media, especially for your questions and for being at this press conference. And again, to our presenters, please stay safe. We have a weekend ahead of us, and we will see you next week. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.